The Henderson family reunion happened every year at my brother David's house in Scottsdale. This year felt different the moment I walked through the door. The usual warm greetings were replaced with uncomfortable glances and whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room. My sister Rachel stood at the head of the dining table, surrounded by our parents, two brothers, and various aunts, uncles, and cousins. She had papers spread out in front of her, and everyone was leaning in, nodding along as she pointed at different documents. "Oh, Meredith," Rachel said when she finally noticed me. "We weren't sure you'd actually show up." "Of course I came," I said, setting down the wine I'd brought. "It's the family reunion." Dad barely looked up from the papers. Mom gave me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. My younger brother Marcus pretended to be intensely focused on his phone. I'd known something was coming. Mom had passed away 6 months ago after a sudden heart attack. The grief was still raw, made worse by the fact that I'd been the only one with her at the hospital when it happened. Rachel had been too busy with her real estate career. David was closing a business deal. Marcus simply didn't answer his phone. But I'd held Mom's hand. I'd heard her final words. And I'd kept those words to myself for half a year, watching and waiting. "We're just going over Mom's estate," Rachel continued, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she'd perfected over the years. "The rental properties in Arizona need to be divided up." "I see," I said quietly, taking a seat at the far end of the table. Rachel shot me an irritated look. "Actually, this is family business. You know, for people who stayed involved." The barb was clear. 5 years ago, I'd moved to Colorado for a job opportunity. In my family's eyes, leaving Arizona meant abandoning them. Never mind that I called Mom twice a week. Never mind that I flew back every major holiday. Never mind that I'd sent money when Dad's business struggled. I'd committed the unforgivable sin of building a life outside the Henderson orbit. "Mom had 12 rental properties," David said, jumping in to support Rachel. "We need to handle this properly." "Of course," I agreed, keeping my voice neutral. Uncle Frank cleared his throat from across the table. "Your mother worked hard for those properties. Started with one duplex 30 years ago and built up from there." "She did," I said softly, remembering how proud Mom had been of her real estate portfolio. How she'd scrimped and saved, fixed leaky faucets herself, dealt with difficult tenants at 2 a.m. Those properties represented decades of her life. Rachel shuffled her papers importantly. "So here's what we've decided. Since I'm in real estate and I understand property management, I'll take 6 of the properties. David gets 4 since he helped Mom with maintenance. Marcus gets 2. The room was silent. Everyone was carefully not looking at me. "And what about Meredith?" Aunt Carol finally asked. Rachel's smile was razor sharp. "Meredith left. She made her choice when she moved to Colorado and stopped being part of this family." "I didn't stop being part of, I started." "You missed Dad's retirement party," Marcus cut in. "I was recovering from surgery," I said calmly. "I sent a video message and a gift." "You weren't at David's promotion dinner," Rachel added. "I was in the hospital with Mom that week. She had pneumonia." "Where were all of you?" The silence that followed was deafening. Dad finally spoke, his voice gruff. "What's done is done. Rachel's proposal seems fair. She's been here. She's put in the work." Something inside me went very still and very cold. This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for since I sat in that hospital room and Mom had gripped my hand with surprising strength for someone so close to death. "Okay," I said simply. Rachel blinked, clearly expecting an argument. "Okay, if that's what the family has decided." I folded my hands in my lap, the picture of calm acceptance. "Well, good," Rachel said, though she looked suspicious. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this." "I'm always reasonable," I replied with a small smile. The conversation moved on. People started discussing which properties would go to whom, talking about rental income and property values. Rachel had clearly done her homework, presenting detailed spreadsheets about each building's worth. I sat quietly, sipping water, watching the performance. Then the doorbell rang. David frowned. "Who else is coming?" "Everyone's here." "I invited someone," I said calmly. "I hope that's okay." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Who?" I stood and walked to the door. Standing on the porch was Gerald Morrison, Mom's estate attorney. He was a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and a briefcase that had seen better days. Mr. Morrison, I greeted him warmly. Thank you for coming. Of course, Meredith, he said, his voice professional but kind. I believe it's time. We walked back into the dining room together. The family reunion chatter died instantly. Everyone, I said, gesturing to Mr. Morrison. This is Gerald Morrison. He's been Mom's estate attorney for over 20 years. Rachel stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. What is this? We already have everything figured out. Do you? Mr. Morrison asked mildly, setting his briefcase on the table. Because I have some documents here that might change that understanding. Dad's face had gone pale. Meredith, what's going on? Mom asked me to wait 6 months, I said quietly, looking at each family member in turn. She wanted to see what you would all do, how you would handle her passing, whether you'd remember the daughter who moved away, but never stopped calling, never stopped caring. This is ridiculous, Rachel snapped. Those properties are not yours to divide, Mr. Morrison interrupted smoothly. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. In 2018, Mrs. Eleanor Henderson executed a series of quitclaim deeds transferring all 12 rental properties into an irrevocable trust. The room went completely silent. The beneficiary of that trust, Mr. Morrison continued, pulling out document after document, is her daughter Meredith and Henderson. Marcus actually laughed. That's impossible. Mom would never. Your mother came to my office in March of 2018, Mr. Morrison said, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. She was very clear about her wishes. She said, and I quote, Rachel cares about my properties. David cares about what I can give him. Marcus cares about himself. But Meredith cares about me. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them back. Not yet. Not until this was finished. This is bullshit, Rachel hissed. You manipulated her. You. The transfers were witnessed and notarized, Mr. Morrison said calmly. All 12 properties. The paperwork was filed with the county recorder's office. It's been public record for over 6 years. Anyone could have looked it up. He began laying out documents on the table. Deed after deed. Each one showing the transfer of property from Eleanor Henderson to the Meredith A. Henderson Irrevocable Trust. The Catalina Street duplex. The Roosevelt Avenue fourplex, the Grant Road apartments, the Speedway Boulevard commercial property. All 12, one by one, their new ownership made clear in black and white legal language. But we've been managing these properties, David stammered. We've been collecting rent, handling maintenance. Yes, I said quietly. You have. And every single dollar of that rent has been deposited into accounts that I've been monitoring. Every repair, every expense, every tenant interaction, all documented. Rachel's face had gone from red to white. You've been spying on us? I've been watching my properties, I corrected. Properties that legally became mine in 2018. Properties that you've all been managing on my behalf, whether you knew it or not. This can't be legal, Dad said desperately. Eleanor wouldn't have done this without telling us. She told Meredith, Mr. Morrison said. That was her choice. And it was entirely legal. Mrs. Henderson was of sound mind and clear intent. I have documentation of our conversations, her reasoning, and her explicit instructions. Aunt Carol spoke up from the corner. Why would Eleanor do this? I took a breath, remembering that hospital room. Mom's labored breathing, the steady beep of machines. Her hand in mine. Because she tested all of us, I said. And she watched who showed up, who called. Who cared about her versus who cared about her money. That's not fair, Marcus protested. We all loved Mom. Did you? I asked, my voice still calm, but with an edge now. Because I have phone records showing I called her 127 times in the year before she died. Rachel, you called 14 times. David, 9. Marcus, 6. We were busy, Rachel shouted. So was I replied. I had a full-time job. A life. But I made time. Every Tuesday and Friday evening, without fail. We talk for hours. About what? David asked bitterly. Her precious rental properties? About her life, I said softly. Her garden. Her book club. Her concerns about Dad's blood pressure. Her worries about all of you. Her pride in her grandchildren. Her memories of our childhood. Everything that mattered to her. The silence that fell was heavy with realization and shame. "There's more," Mr. Morrison said, pulling out another file. "Ms. Henderson asked me to conduct a forensic accounting of the rental income from these properties for the past 6 years." Rachel went very still. "It appears," Mr. Morrison continued, "that rental income totaling approximately $340,000 has gone, unaccounted for." "What are you saying?" Dad demanded. "I'm saying that while the properties were generating roughly $8,000 per month in combined rent, only about $3,200 per month was being reported in the estate's financial records. The rest appears to have been diverted." "That's a lie," Rachel shouted, but her voice cracked. Mr. Morrison calmly opened a ledger. "Property A, the Catalina duplex, has 2 units renting for $950 each. But only $1,100 per month was reported. Property B, the Roosevelt fourplex, generates $3,800 monthly, but only $1,200 was reported." "Shall I continue?" David stood up abruptly. "I need some air." "Sit down," I said, and something in my voice made him freeze. "You're not going anywhere until this is finished." For the first time in my life, my older brother obeyed me, without argument. "The properties are all titled in my name now," I said. "They have been since 2018, which means every dollar of rent collected since then legally belongs to me. Every dollar that was skimmed, hidden, or unreported was theft." "You wouldn't," Rachel whispered. "We're family." "Family," I repeated. "You mean the people who were just dividing up properties they didn't own? The people who told me I didn't deserve anything because I moved to Colorado? That family." Aunt Carol spoke again, her voice shaking. "Meredith, what are you going to do?" I looked at Mr. Morrison, who handed me another document. I held it up so everyone could see. "This is a formal demand for the return of all diverted rental income, plus interest. The total comes to $387,000. "We don't have that kind of money," Marcus yelped. "Then you'll need to figure something out," I said calmly. "You have 30 days. "And if we can't?" David asked. "Then we go to court," Mr. Morrison said. "And possibly criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud." Rachel collapsed into her chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling. "You can't do this. Mom wouldn't want this." "Mom did this," I said, my voice finally showing emotion. "She set this all up 6 years ago because she knew. She knew who you all were. She knew what would happen when she was gone. She tested you and you failed." "What did she say to you?" Dad asked quietly. "In the hospital. What were her last words?" I felt the tears come then, but I didn't try to stop them. She said, "Watch them. See who they really are when I'm gone. Then do what needs to be done. You're the only one strong enough." The room was silent except for someone's muffled crying. I think it was Aunt Carol. I didn't want to believe her. I continued. I thought maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe the medication was making her cynical. But I watched. I waited. And you proved her right. "So what now?" David asked, his voice hollow. "You take everything and we get nothing?" "No," I said, and saw a flicker of hope in several faces. "You get exactly what you earned, which is a bill for $387,000 in stolen rental income." "We can't pay that," Rachel said desperately. "You managed to spend it," I replied. "Rachel, I see you bought a new BMW last year." "David, that boat in your driveway looks expensive." "Marcus, how much did you spend in Vegas over the past 3 years?" Marcus actually flinched. "The money was there when you wanted it." I continued. "Find a way to pay it back." "And if we do?" Dad asked. "If we somehow come up with that money, then what?" I considered this. "Then we're done. The properties are mine, as they've been for 6 years. I'll manage them myself going forward. You'll have no claim on them, no involvement with them, and no share of the income." "That's it?" Rachel asked bitterly. "After everything Mom built, you just cut us out?" "Mom cut you out," I corrected gently. "In 2018, when she saw clearly what I'm only now accepting. You loved what she could give you. I loved her." Uncle Frank stood up slowly. I think I need to go." He looked at me, his eyes sad. Your mother was a wise woman, Meredith. I'm sorry it came to this. He left, and slowly others followed. The reunion disbanded in shocked, shameful silence. Within 20 minutes, only my immediate family remained. Mom, Dad, Rachel, David, Marcus, Mr. Morrison, and me. I need those financials, Mr. Morrison said to Rachel. All of them. Every bank statement, every deposit record, every expense report. You have 48 hours to deliver them to my office. Rachel nodded mutely. And I need keys to all 12 properties, I added. Immediately. David pulled out his key ring with shaking hands and started removing keys. Rachel did the same. Marcus had to go to his car to get his set. When they were all piled in front of me, a small mountain of brass and silver, I felt the weight of what I'd just done settle on my shoulders. Can we talk about this? Dad asked. Please, Meredith. Let's not do this. We are doing this, I said firmly. It's already done. It was done in 2018. You just didn't know it. Your mother wouldn't want this family torn apart, Mom said, speaking for the first time since the revelation. I looked at her carefully. You knew, didn't you? About the transfers? She hesitated, then nodded slightly. Eleanor told me. Made me promise not to say anything. And you agreed? Dad looked betrayed. She was dying, Mom whispered. She knew it before any of us. Her heart was giving out, and she knew. She wanted to protect Meredith. She said Meredith was the only one who'd never asked her for anything. It was true. In all my years, I'd never asked Mom for money, for help, for anything except her time and her stories. I should have said something, Mom continued, tears streaming down her face. But Eleanor made me promise. She said it would all work out the way it needed to. It has, I said quietly. Rachel let out a bitter laugh. You must be so proud of yourself. Playing the long game, pretending to be the good daughter while plotting to take everything. I didn't plot anything, I said tiredly. Mom made these choices. I just honored them. And I would have been content to let you all manage the properties forever if you'd just remembered I existed. If you'd included me. If you'd shown 1 ounce of the love and respect you showed each other. We did love you, David said. Did you? I asked. Or did you love the idea of me? The sister who lived far away and didn't interfere? The one you could forget about until family reunions? No one had an answer. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat. I think we've accomplished what we needed to today. Meredith, I'll need to meet with you tomorrow to discuss property management and the financial recovery process. Of course, I said. Thank you for coming, Mr. Morrison. He nodded to everyone and left, taking the heavy legal atmosphere with him. What happens now? Marcus asked quietly. Really? What happens to us? I looked at my youngest brother. He'd always been the follower, going along with whatever Rachel and David decided. You have 30 days to provide full financial accounting and return the diverted funds. After that, we'll see. And if we can't, Rachel pressed. Then Mr. Morrison will file a civil suit for recovery of the funds and possibly criminal complaints for fraud and embezzlement. That's not a threat, Rachel. That's just the legal reality. You'd really send your own family to jail? David asked, shocked. You really stole from your own sister, I countered. For 6 years. Nearly $400,000. So, let's not pretend I'm the villain here. Dad stood up, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I think we should all go. This has been a lot. Yes, I agreed. It has. They filed out one by one. Rachel wouldn't look at me. David muttered something under his breath. Marcus just looked lost. Dad paused at the door. She really loved you, you know, he said quietly. Your mother. She talked about you all the time. I know, I said. I loved her too. I wish. He trailed off, seeming to age another decade in that moment. I wish we'd done better by you. Me too, Dad, I said softly. Me too. He left, and I was alone in David's house with the 12 sets of property keys on the table in front of me. I picked them up slowly, feeling the weight of each one. 12 properties. 12 pieces of my mother's life's work. 12 testaments to her wisdom in knowing who would treasure what she built and who would just see dollar signs. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Sarah in Colorado. How did it go? I typed back. Exactly like Mom predicted. 3 dots appeared then. Need me to come down? No, I wrote. I'm okay. Really? I'll call you tonight. I gathered the keys and my purse and walked out of David's house, probably for the last time. The Arizona sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that Mom had always loved. I drove to the first property, the Catalina Street duplex, where this all began 30 years ago. It was a modest building, well-maintained, with a small garden in front that Mom had planted. I sat in my car looking at it and finally let myself cry. Not for the family I'd just confronted, but for the mother who'd loved me enough to see clearly, who'd protected me even from beyond the grave, who'd known that someday I'd need this gift and this lesson. Thank you, Mom, I whispered. I'll take care of them. All 12. Just like you took care of me. The tears came harder then, grief and relief and vindication all mixed together. I cried for the family that could have been, for the relationships that would never recover, for the trust that had been broken long before today. But I also cried with gratitude, because Mom had seen me, really seen me, had known that I would need not just the properties, but the validation that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the problem, that my love had been real and returned, even when everyone else made me doubt it. The next 4 weeks were brutal. Rachel hired a lawyer who immediately tried to challenge the transfers, claiming undue influence. It went nowhere. Mr. Morrison's documentation was ironclad. Mom had been examined by 2 independent physicians before executing the transfers, both of whom certified her sound mind and clear intent. David tried a different approach, calling me repeatedly to negotiate. He offered to buy back some of the properties at below market value. I declined each time. Marcus sent a long email apologizing and asking for mercy. I replied with a simple, return the money, then we'll talk. Dad said nothing. He and Mom stopped coming to family events. I heard through Aunt Carol that they were seeing a marriage counselor, that the revelation had shaken their entire relationship. The financial accounting revealed the situation was even worse than Mr. Morrison initially calculated. The actual diverted amount was $412,000 over 6 years. Rachel had been the primary beneficiary, using rental income to fund her increasingly expensive lifestyle. David had taken about a third, using it for his boat and a timeshare in Mexico. Marcus had received the least, but had still benefited to the tune of $40,000. None of them could pay it back in 30 days. Rachel's lawyer sent an offer to settle for $150,000 paid over 5 years. I rejected it. On day 31, Mr. Morrison filed a civil suit for full recovery plus interest and legal fees. The total claim was now $467,000. Rachel showed up at my hotel room that night, drunk and crying. Please, she begged. Please don't do this. I'll lose everything. You should have thought of that before you stole from me, I said, not unkindly. For 6 years, Rachel. 6 years. I didn't know it was yours, she shouted. That doesn't matter. I replied calmly. It wasn't yours. You never asked questions. You just took what you wanted, like you always have. She left, cursing me. I felt nothing. The lawsuit moved forward. David and Marcus tried to negotiate separately, offering to testify against Rachel in exchange for reduced penalties. I refused. They were all equally guilty. 3 months after the reunion, the court ruled in my favor. The judgment was for the full amount plus legal fees, $489,000 total. Rachel filed for bankruptcy. David had to sell his boat and take out a second mortgage on his house. Marcus moved back in with my parents. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, only a deep, bone-tired sadness that had come to this. But I also felt something else, freedom. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't have to wonder if I was the problem. Didn't have to question whether I was too sensitive, too distant, too different. Mom had validated everything I'd felt, but been told I was imagining. I hired a property management company to handle the 12 rentals. The income, properly managed and not diverted, was substantial, about $96,000 per year after expenses and taxes. I used part of it to establish a scholarship fund in Mom's name for young women pursuing business degrees. The rest I saved, invested, and lived on modestly. I didn't quit my job in Colorado. Didn't buy a mansion or a fancy car. The properties weren't about wealth for me, they were about validation, about love, about a mother who saw her daughter clearly and protected her. I returned to Arizona for the anniversary of Mom's death. I brought flowers to her grave, purple irises, her favorite. I took care of them, Mom, I said quietly, arranging the flowers. Just like you asked. All 12 properties. They're safe. They're generating income. They're helping people through the scholarship fund. You'd be proud. The cemetery was quiet except for birds and distant traffic. Rachel's rebuilding. I continued. She got a job with a competitor, took a massive pay cut, but she's working. David sold the boat, and he and his wife are in counseling. Marcus went back to school.
Dad and Mom they're trying.
Aunt Carol says they ask about me sometimes. I trace Mom's name on the headstone. Eleanor Marie Henderson. Beloved mother, grandmother, and friend. I miss you, I whispered. Every day. But thank you. For seeing me. For protecting me. For teaching me that love isn't about being present in the easy times. It's about showing up when it's hard. About calling every Tuesday and Friday even when you're tired. About caring more about the person than what they can give you. A breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of the desert after rain. I'm okay, Mom, I said finally. I really am. You made sure of it. I stayed a while longer, then drove to the Catalina Street duplex. I'd kept it exactly as Mom had left it, maintaining the garden, keeping the same tenants who'd been there for years. Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd rented the north unit for a decade, was outside watering plants. She waved when she saw me. Meredith. I was hoping I'd see you this trip. Hi, Mrs. Rodriguez. How's everything? Perfect as always. You take such good care of this place, just like your mother did. She paused, studying my face. You look like her, you know, especially around the eyes. Thank you, I said softly. That means a lot. She talked about you all the time, Mrs. Rodriguez continued. So proud. Always saying, my Meredith, she calls me twice a week. Never misses. She loved you so much. The tears came then, but they were gentler now. Healing tears instead of grief tears. I loved her too. I managed. Mrs. Rodriguez patted my hand. She knew, honey. She knew. I drove back to the airport as the sun set, painting the Arizona sky in those colors Mom loved. My phone rang. It was Sarah. Hey, how are you doing? She asked. I'm okay, I said. Really okay. For the first time in a year, I feel settled. Good, Sarah said warmly. Because I need my best friend back. Also, I'm getting married and I need a maid of honor who won't judge my terrible taste in bridesmaid dresses. I laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. When? Next summer. You in? Absolutely, I said. Wouldn't miss it. As my plane took off that evening, I looked down at the city lights of Phoenix spreading below. Somewhere down there were 12 properties that Mom had built, protected, and passed to the daughter, who understood that real estate wasn't just about buildings. It was about legacy, love, and seeing clearly who people really were. I'd learned that lesson well. Too well, maybe. But I wouldn't trade it. Because Mom had given me more than properties. She'd given me validation. Freedom. The knowledge that I wasn't crazy, wasn't wrong, wasn't the problem. She'd given me the truth. And sometimes the truth costs $489,000 and your entire family. But it's worth it. Every single penny. 2 years after the reunion, I received a letter. It was from Rachel, handwritten on plain paper. Meredith, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I've forgiven myself. But I wanted you to know that I've been going to therapy, working through why I did what I did. Why I took money that wasn't mine. Why I treated you the way I did. The therapist says I was jealous. That sounds so petty and small, but it's true. You left. You built a life away from us, away from Mom's shadow. And you were still her favorite. I could never understand that. I stayed. I managed the properties. I showed up for everything. And still, she chose you. I get it now. She didn't choose you because you stayed or left. She chose you because you saw her as a person, not as a resource. You loved her, not what she could give you. I wish I'd understood that before she died. Before I destroyed our relationship. Before everything fell apart. I'm not asking for anything. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, nothing. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand. And I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught, sorry for who I was. Who I became. Take care of those properties. They meant everything to Mom. And clearly, you meant everything to her too. Rachel. I read the letter 3 times, sitting in my apartment in Colorado with tears streaming down my face. Then I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I called her. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice uncertain. Hello. It's Meredith, I said. Silence. I got your letter. I continued. Oh, she said quietly. I didn't know if you would. I did. And Rachel? Yeah, thank you. For understanding. Finally. Her breath caught. Does this mean? It doesn't mean we're okay, I said gently but firmly. It doesn't mean I'm dropping the lawsuit or giving back any properties. It doesn't mean we're going to be close again. I know, she whispered. But it means, I continued, that maybe someday we can have coffee.
And talk.
And you can tell me about your therapy, and I can tell you about Mom's scholarship fund, and we can try to be something. Not sisters like we were, but something. I'd like that, Rachel said, crying now.
Someday.
Whenever you're ready.
Me too, I said.
Someday. We hung up, and I sat for a long time, looking at the letter. Mom had been right about so many things. Right about who her children were. Right about what they would do. Right about who needed protecting. But I don't think even Mom could have predicted this, that the pain would eventually lead to growth. That the confrontation would force change. That the truth, as brutal as it was, might actually set us all free. The properties still generated income. The scholarship fund still helped young women. The lawsuit still stood as a legal reminder that actions have consequences. But now there was also this, a letter, an apology, a tiny seed of possibility that maybe, just maybe, something better could grow from the ashes of what was destroyed. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer, next to the deed to the Catalina Street duplex and the photo of Mom in her garden. What do you think, Mom? I asked the empty room. Do we give her a chance? The answer came not in words but in a memory. Mom's voice, 2 days before she died, weak but clear. People can change, Meredith. They just rarely want it badly enough. But when they do, when they really do, love means giving them that chance. I smiled, wiping my tears. Okay, Mom, I said. Someday. We'll try someday. And for the first time since that reunion, since the revelations and the lawsuits and the pain, I felt something that had been missing. Hope. Not for what was, but for what might yet be.